Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, my international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, a little bit of television, all sorts of entertainment stuff. And it is Wednesday. The NBA Finals start tonight. My wife, Ann, who's a lifelong Laker fan, very excited about that. I'm flying solo today. Robert Meyer Burnett was going to be joining me here today, but he's working on editing a Netflix project right now, and something came up this morning, so he sends his apologies, but he couldn't be with us here today, but that's okay. It'll just be you, me, a cozy fire, and a bottle of Don Champagne, or however it is that Christopher Walken used to say it. Anyway, it's good to have you guys here. And we do have a bunch of stuff that we need to talk about here today. Now, before we get into all that stuff, want to remind you guys, if you have not done so already, why don't you take a second and click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to the John Campea Show YouTube channel. It'll keep you up to date on all the stuff that we got going on here. Also want to remind you that if you've not done so already, you should go on over and make sure you sign up to the John Campea podcast. That, of course, is the audio only version of this show, you know, for all those times that maybe, you know, you can't have YouTube on in front of you. Maybe you're at the gym or you're at work or you're on the road. Make sure you go and subscribe to the podcast so it is there, ready and waiting for you. All right, guys, here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to start off the show by talking about a couple of subjects, and then we're going to go into the second half of the show and take your live comments and questions. And here's how you get in a live comment or question. Just use the tip link that's in the top of the description of this video. You can use it anytime, or you can enter it manually, streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show if it's within reason. And of course, you'll be supporting the show at the same time. But first, let's get into some main topics here. We're going to start off with this little off the top that came in. You know, Netflix had a big hit with The Witcher. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It was a big win for them because it did well with their digital ratings. It also went over very well with audiences. I personally loved it, but I'm a big Henry Cavill fan. But that notwithstanding, I thought the show was fantastic, and it really scratched that little sword and sorcery itch that a lot of the viewers had and were waiting for. Well, it looks like Netflix is going to try to go back to that sword and sorcery kind of motif again, because it's just come out this morning, this is why this isn't off the top, that Netflix is working on developing a Conan the Barbarian season. Or series, I should say. Obviously, Conan's been around longer than The Witcher, but anyway, this is what it says over at Deadline. Netflix has put into development an epic live-action series based on Conan, the iconic sword and sorcery character created by Robert E. Howard, I have learned. I hear the project from Frederick Malmberg and Mark Wheeler's Pathfinder Media is the first in a deal between Netflix and Conan Properties International, owned by Malmberg's Cabinet Entertainment. The pact gives Netflix exclusive option to acquire the rights to the Conan literary library and develop works across TV and film, both live action and animated. Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting here. A search is currently underway, so they don't have a script or anything yet. They have no script. They have nothing right now except a deal in place. A search is currently underway for a writer/showrunner to pen the Conan adaptation and to try to find a director to helm the project. Malmberg and Wheeler will serve as executive producers on the potential series through their Pathfinder Media. So it looks like we're going back to Conan again. Now listen, I have been a Conan fan since the original Conan days. By the original, I don't mean the 1930s novel. I, of course, mean the Arnold Schwarzenegger classic with that score by Basil Poledouris, like that just iconic music. You got James Earl Jones in there. Loved it. Now, they took a crack at Conan again a couple of years ago, and it's pretty much universally hated. I didn't hate it, though. Personally, I didn't hate it. I actually thought it had some upside, particularly the first act. I thought the first act of the film was pretty good. And of course, that's the one that stars Jason Momoa and Stephen Lang from Avatar fame as the main villain. And I thought Stephen Lang was great. I thought Jason Momoa made a very good Conan, as a matter of fact. And I thought the first act was pretty good. It kind of fell off the wheels. And at the end of the day, is it a great Conan movie? No, it's not. But I personally didn't hate it as much as most people. I am a big sucker for, maybe it's my Dungeons and Dragons background or my Lord of the Rings fan, but I'm a big sucker for sword and sandal kind of movies. I really am. And sword and sandal kind of shows. Hell, I even used to watch, the Hercules Great Adventures, whatever that one was called. That was on TV, and Xena Warrior. I even used to watch that crap because I'm a sucker for that stuff. So I am instantly interested in a Conan. Of course, probably much like other properties, one of the key things here is going to be, who do they get to play Conan? Because if you're playing Conan the Barbarian, there's no way around it. There is a physical type you have to get. Like, you can't, I always say, I don't care what actor you get for what role as long as it's a good actor, right? That's all that really matters. But you can't go out and get Daniel Day-Lewis, although he is the GOAT and the greatest actor of all time. You can't go out and get Daniel Day-Lewis to play Conan the Barbarian. You just can't. I don't care I don't care how much horse steroids you pump into him. I don't care how much he works out for the next 2 years. You can't get Daniel Day-Lewis to play Conan, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see where they go with Conan. And I don't want a wrestler. I don't want Triple H. I don't want whatever. It'd just be interesting to see where they go. Now, of course, the one problem they may face is the whole notion of, how is a Netflix audience going to respond to a Conan story in the era that we have The Witcher? There used to be this joke that would go around that, people just got mad at Lord of the Rings because it was a ripoff of Dungeons and Dragons, which of course was a joke because Dungeons and Dragons was around first. I wonder how many people who may not truly be aware or have never really experienced that original Arnold Schwarzenegger movie might think, this kind of feels like a Witcher ripoff. I mean, they're very, very different stories, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that Netflix can sustain two kind of shows like this going on at the same time? Hey, I think if they're done right, why not? Network television has 15 cop procedural shows and 12 hospital procedural shows going on at the same time. Why can't Netflix have a couple of sword and sandal movies? I don't know. What do you guys think about it? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to our main topics of the day. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Gerald McFarlane, who writes, I know you consider yourself a big Zac Efron fan. I am a big Zac Efron fan, as a matter of fact. So I thought you'd love the news that Efron has just signed on to star in the new Firestarter remake that Blumhouse is doing. I'm not really one to like remakes a lot, but I loved Invisible Man, and that Blumhouse did that one too, so I'll give this one a shot. What do you think? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, Zac Efron, listen, in a world that doesn't give Zac Efron a lot of credit, I unabashedly am a big Zac Efron fan. I think he is a tremendously, you guys have watched my show for a while, you guys know I've said this a lot, I think he is a tremendously underrated talent. I really do. I think he's tremendously underrated. And I think the main reason he's been underrated is because of the fact some people don't like the movies he happens to appear in. What we as film fans often do is we mistake whether a movie turned out great, and we sometimes, erroneously equate that with how good the actor must be that's in it. I remember I saw Zac Efron. The first time I really saw Zac Efron, that made me go, holy crap, this dude can act, was in this little movie he did with Claire Danes, I believe, called Me and Orson Welles. And it was a small film that came out, 8 years ago. But I remember when I watched that, because to me at that time, Zac Efron was just a High School Musical kid. But when I saw that, I was like, holy crap, this guy's good. And I recently loved him in Greatest Showman. And then he was in that Ted Bundy movie. I mean, he's just constantly showing he's got really good acting chops. So I am a fan of his. He's got that little show on Netflix going on right now where he's traveling around the world. Anyway, we now know that he has been cast to join up with the project being done by Blumhouse for Firestarter. Now, the original Firestarter with Drew Barrymore, George C. Scott, Martin Sheen, it's got a special place in my heart because I watched that when I was real young. And pardon me, I watched that when I was real young, and it made an impression on me. Who am I kidding? It scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. Scared the hell out of me as a kid. But for whatever, it's just always stayed with me. So no, it is not a great movie. The original Firestarter is not a great movie. But as you kind of pointed out in your message, it's Blumhouse, man. I mean, listen, if you had to ask me, do I think an Invisible Man movie is going to work? Particularly a really low budget. Remember, they made Invisible Man in the era where a lot of films are being made with $100 million budgets, $150 million budgets, $200 million budgets. Blumhouse made Invisible Man for $8 million. $8 million they made Invisible Man for. And so was I really thinking that was going to turn out to be much? No, but I was really entertained by it. I thought what Blumhouse did with that movie was tremendous. I found it to be a thoroughly entertaining movie. In the wacky year that 2020 has been, it still stands as one of my favorite movies of the year so far. So why not? Sign me up. And so then you go from that and you're adding a talent like Zac Efron, who I think can elevate the material he's in. And to me, yep, I'm on board. A Firestarter remake by Blumhouse, putting who I think is one of the more underrated actors in the world. Sign me up. Now, you got some key roles you got to fill still, right? Who are you going to do with the kid? I mean, Drew Barrymore isn't 7 anymore. So what are you going to do with the kid? Who's going to play that like George C. Scott kind of role? There's a lot of question marks still surrounding this project. But for right now, with the production company behind it, with the actor they've just cast, sign me up. I'm on board. Question is, what do you guys think about this announcement, this move? Maybe you think Firestarter is a movie that should have just been left alone and never touched. This is bad. Maybe you're as excited about it as me. Maybe you like the casting of Zac Efron. Maybe you don't. What do you guys think? Jump into the comments section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Tina Almeida, who writes, "Hi, John and crew." Hello, Tina. Where's that? Amazon has officially acquired the rights to the Borat sequel. Oh, yes, it has. They have officially acquired the rights to the Borat sequel and will drop it next month. Also, apparently, Sacha Baron Cohen had to wear a bulletproof vest in some scenes, which only makes me wonder, what the hell are we going to see? What are your expectations for the movie? All right, man. Thanks a lot for sending that in. And yes, Borat is back. Now, we just talked the other day on the show about the fact that, oh my gosh, did you hear that Sacha Baron Cohen has secretly filmed? Like, this is just like 2 weeks ago that we found out that Sacha Baron Cohen had secretly filmed a sequel to Borat and had already even screened it for some studio execs. It's like, how in this day and age do you secretly film a major motion picture? I don't know, but he did it. And then here we are just a couple weeks later, and it's been announced the movie is coming out, and it's going to come out on Amazon in October. It's coming out, well, about a month from now. It's coming less than a month from now. Borat 2 is going to be coming out less than a month from now. This is what we get from Deadline. Sacha Baron Cohen's Borat sequel, which was filmed and edited in secret earlier this year, now has a release date. Well, it's actually more of a release window since the official date hasn't been revealed quite yet. Borat 2, which just received its own a ludicrously long title in keeping with the 2006 original film's official title, will be dropping on Amazon Prime Video in time for the 2020 presidential elections. Deadline broke the news about the Borat 2 release, but they don't know precisely when the film will be making its debut on Amazon Prime Video. Instead, all we know is that it will arrive sometime in late October. Now, I've got this as credited if it's coming from Deadline. This is actually coming from Slash Film, who is talking about the report they read in Deadline, obviously. Now, it should also be pointed out that in that Deadline article, they originally said the release date was October 23rd, and then they pulled that information And now it's currently set sometime for late October. And the actual name of the movie, oh my gosh, let me see if I can actually find it. Okay, here's the actual name of the movie. The actual name of the movie is Borat, Gift of Pornographic Monkey to Vice Premier Mikhail Pence to make benefit recently diminished nation of Kazakhstan. Yeah, good luck remembering the full title. Look, here are my thoughts on this. I was completely caught by surprise by the original Borat movie. I was totally caught by surprise by it. I was expecting some kind of funny, jokey kind of little thing, and it is certainly funny, and it's certainly kind of jokey. But the first Borat movie, to me, is actually one of the smartest movies I've seen in a long time. Yeah, it was ridiculously funny. Ken Davidian as, what was his character's name? He's the guy who goes around with Borat all over the place. I'm forgetting the character's name. But Ken Davidian, who played the guy, when I wonder if Ken Davidian's in this. I hope Ken Davidian's in this. I loved him as kind of Borat's sidekick along the way. But that movie was ridiculous. It was absurd and it was funny. But it was brilliant also in its simplicity. And this is one of the things that really stood out to me about the first film, was that it was brilliant in the simplicity of all the movie really did was took us as a culture and held up a mirror. That's all it did. In the midst of this over-the-top, ludicrous character of Borat, really what it was an artist who just kind of created some scenarios and just held up a mirror so we would see ourselves in our own absurdity, in our own ridiculousness. Sometimes when we were looking in that mirror, we saw some things that we didn't like very much. Sometimes when we looked in that mirror, it showed us things that let us laugh at ourselves. Sometimes when we looked in the mirror, the movie showed us things we should be ashamed of ourselves for. But it was incredibly intricately beautiful in that simplicity. Funny, ridiculous, over the top, haha, but at the same time, and it didn't even make commentary. Like, that's the thing about the first Borat film. It didn't even make commentary. It literally just was, okay, I'm going to create a weird situation, and I'm just going to let you see yourselves what you guys do, like to us as a Western culture, right? And I thought it was brilliant in that way. Now, as much as I loved Borat, one of the very, very few films I have ever given a 10 out of 10 to, back when I used to give numerical scores, I gave that movie a 10 out of 10. One of only like 7 or 8 films I've ever done that for on my first viewing. The movie doesn't have the replayability that a lot of other great movies have. And I think that's partially because of the nature of the film. So like my second viewing wasn't as good as my first, and my third viewing wasn't as good as my second, but because, you know, that shock and that novelty and that awareness of seeing that reflection of our own culture being reflected back at ourselves through the mirror that Sacha Baron Cohen holds up, the effect of that is diminished after the first viewing. But that first experience, though, that first experience watching that movie was unbelievable. I wonder, though, if a second movie can work today. I'm not saying Sacha Baron Cohen isn't as sharp as he's always been. He obviously is. But because Borat, as brilliant and almost perfect as it was in its first viewing, because that novelty kind of dissipates after the first viewing, I'm wondering if that novelty can still be as effective in a sequel. And I remember I brought that up with Rob when we first talked about the fact that he had secretly shot this movie. I said, you know, I love this news. I'm looking forward to seeing this. But watching it a second and third time, not as good as the first time. Well, going back to see a sequel of it, we're starting from a position that we already know this character. We already know the shtick of this character. So will it be able to be effective when we're already prepared for it? Because that was part of the effectiveness of the first movie, right? Part of the effectiveness of the first movie was that we were completely unprepared for it. We were completely unprepared for this Borat character. And so it kept us on our toes, which added to, because we never knew what he was going to do, and it added to the effectiveness of the movie overall. I am not saying that won't work in a sequel. I am simply asking the question that I wonder if it will still work in a second film when that unpredictability, when that newness, when that unfamiliarity we had with Borat is no longer there. Now we know the character. Now we know what to kind of look for. Now we kind of know what he might do in a scenario, whereas before it would catch us totally off guard. So I'm just wondering. I'm very much looking forward to it. I can't believe it's coming out in just a few weeks. I'm very excited about it. I just have a little bit of cautious optimism because I wonder if the novelty is already played out. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Guys, question is, what do you, by the way, they dropped the first trailer for it. Like it's just this little 30-second sizzle, which is really hilarious. Like they put it up on Twitter or something like that. I don't know if you guys saw it. I thought it was pretty funny. Bidin's breath so bad he must wear mask. I mean, I thought it was pretty funny. I don't know. What do you think about this whole Borat 2? It's coming out on Amazon Prime in just a few weeks. Are you looking forward to it? Do you think it'll be as good as the first one? Maybe you didn't even like the first one. Maybe you think this will be an Oscar winner. Maybe you think it'll be terrible. I don't know. What do you guys think? Jump into the comments section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Geeky Gator, who writes, "Hey, John and gang. After this whole shutdown, it looks like a lot of theaters are going to be shut down permanently, which reduces the amount of available screenings for future films. Looking at how massive Endgame's record-breaking opening weekend and final gross was, do you think this may never be broken? Especially if the future involves more streaming." All right, thanks for sending that in, Geeky Gator. And yes, that is going to be, that's a huge question right now. It's a massive question right now because we right now are living in a situation, we're living in an environment right now where yes, the theaters are closed. Now we've talked about this a bit before, but let me set it up again here just for the context of this conversation. You know, for months, I've been very optimistic that the theaters will get open in time to play some catalog movies to get people back into the habit a little bit of coming back to the movies, and then Tenet's going to open. And then once Tenet's open, and hopefully he can make a little bit of money, then the next big film will come out. Wonder Woman, Black Widow, things like that. And then we will be on the road to recovery as far as the movie theater and the movie industry itself goes. But while Tenet has come out, and it's, I think today it crosses 300 million at the box office. Hey, in the age of a pandemic with all the theaters having been closed for almost 6 months, that's not terrible. It is terrible under normal circumstances, but I contend that that's not terrible. But the problem we now face is the fact that all these movies that were supposed to follow up, all of these movies that were supposed to come after Tenet, all of these movies, these bigger movies that were supposed to come and keep the momentum going after Tenet, they've all moved. Wonder Woman 84 moved. Black Widow's officially moved. As of right now, they're still saying Soul is going to come out. I have my doubts that Soul is actually going to come out. They're still saying it will, and maybe they're right. Maybe it will, but I have my doubts right now. It's created an environment where one of the head guys at the National Association of Theater Owners, which kind of represents all the theaters, has come out and said, yeah, you're probably going to see a bunch of movie theaters close down again. Because without new movies, without big new movies to draw in the audiences, it costs more money to be open than it is to be closed. And so we're going to be right back to square one again. Going right back to square one again, as you pointed out in your email, means that a lot of movie theaters, which were already precariously close to the edge of going out of business, are going to be going over the edge. They're going to be going over the edge, and they're going to go out of business. I mean, as a matter of fact, China already reported something like 40% of their theater chains are going to be closed by the end of the year. not just closed like temporarily, but like out of business. We've been talking a lot about the trials and tribulations of AMC theaters. They're in a lot of trouble. But now it's no longer just AMC theaters. Now it's Regal too. It's Cineworld. It's Cinemark. It's Landmark. There's a lot of theaters. So we are now getting precariously close. So not only are we're going to have to reset that whole winding everything back up again. Forget it. It was all for naught. Everything's going to be set back to zero again. And on top of that, a lot of theaters are going to be in a lot more trouble than they were before, and some of them aren't going to come back at all. We could be looking quite literally at a theatrical apocalypse. We could be seeing, now honestly, I thought before, and I completely believe I was right. I completely thought that the movie theater industry will completely be fine, provided things go the way we think they're going to go. You know, as we get into September, some theaters will open back up. They'll play some catalog films, and then Tenet will come out, and then Wonder Woman come out, and not everything will go back to normal right away, but we'll get there, right? That belief that I had for the longest time is completely facing new challenges now. Now, I don't know that I believe that anymore. I don't know that I believe that the theatrical side of things can survive this. And if the theatrical side doesn't survive it, it's going to change the movie studio system forever. It's going to change it forever. You think we're going to get 10 to 15, 150 million to 200 something on $1 million huge tentpole blockbusters a year anymore without the movie theaters? Nope. Say goodbye to those days. Bye-bye. We're not going to get those types of movies anymore. At least not in the level and in the quantity that we've been getting accustomed over the last decade in getting them. It's just not going to be like that anymore because without the theaters there's not enough money. There's just not enough money available. Certainly not through streaming. The money ain't there through streaming. The real money is in the theaters. So with all that context, what does that mean for things like box office records? Well, it changes things, right? It changes things. It changes the fundamentals of the question. Because it's one thing to say, hey, could, Endgame's opening weekend box office record ever be broken? Under normal circumstances, the answer to any question that has the word ever or could is always yes. Yes. Ever? Yeah, someday that opening weekend box office record will be broken. Yes, that could happen someday. Could they make another Dragon Ball Z live action film? Yes, they could. May not be this year, may not be in the next 5 years, but it could happen. And whenever you ask could or ever, the answer is almost always yes. But what happens if the nature of reality changes? You know, back in the days when a professional sports league had a 40-game season, and you ask, hey, could that guy's, point record stand forever? Well, it could. It could. But what happens when the nature of the reality changes? Now sports leagues have 80-game seasons, 90-game seasons, 160-game seasons. Suddenly now that could completely changes. That ever completely changes because the nature of the reality of the context is completely changed. So 6 months ago, could movies like Avatar and Endgame get their box office records broken? Absolutely. Ever? Yeah, it may not be in the next 5 years, may not be in the next 10 years, but ever? Absolutely. But what if there's no movie theaters around? Or what if there's only half of the amount of movie theaters around anymore? Suddenly, that could or ever question is irrelevant because the nature of the reality of the context is completely changed. Yeah, in a world where there's a whole ton of these healthy theater chains operating, there's 7,000 screens across America that are selling out tickets and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, in that environment, in that reality, yes, those records are going to be broken. Eventually, somehow, some way, someday. But if the nature of that reality changes, and we no longer have 30% of the theaters, and we no longer have 40% of the screens, then I don't know. Like, honestly, right now, and I'm going to make a thoughts on walks about this fairly soon, but we are on the precipice possibly of a complete systemic paradigm shift in the entertainment industry as a whole. It's going to change everything. And there's a lot of blissfully ignorant people. And when I say that, we all live in blissful ignorance once in a while, like it's great not to be aware of some things. And I think there's a lot of film fans right now who are just blissfully ignorant of the fact that they just think, oh, well, if the theaters aren't there, then we'll still get all the same movies and we'll still get all that. It'll just be on streaming. No, it won't. No, it won't. Rothman over at Sony gave a great explanation about that. It's just not. It's going to change everything. It's going to change everything in ways we can't even predict right now. And I'm not going to lie to you, that scares me. It does. As somebody who's a lifelong film fan, that scares me. I mean, I've got a whole diatribe to go on about how terrified I am just of losing the theatrical experience. Like, movies are great on any screen. It doesn't matter if it's on my computer screen, on my 75-inch television downstairs with my surround sound speakers, whether it's on my phone. Movies are great. But none of that stuff comes close to the actual theatrical experience. Nothing comes close. Nothing. Nothing comes like within a whiff of an actual theatrical experience. That experience of actually making an event out of it, getting together with your significant other or friends or family, heading out for the evening, going into this theater with hundreds of other film fans there to watch a movie where we cry and cheer and gasp and jump scare and whatever all together. It just on this massive, real large screen, not your piddly little 75-inch TV nonsense, but a real big screen. And, you know, not just doing what you do every fucking night, sitting at home on my couch, oh, this is great. No, like actually getting out and going out with friends and making a night out of it. Just everything about the theatrical experience. The notion of losing that, it breaks my heart, guys. It breaks my heart. And I've never wanted to believe it, but I'm starting to think we might be heading there sooner than I thought. And I wouldn't feel that way if Wonder Woman hadn't moved. If Black Widow hadn't moved, I wouldn't feel that way, but I do now. And so, yes, getting back to the fundamental question of, are we ever going to see Avatar's 10 years as the number one film at the box office of all time get that record broken? I don't know that we ever will now. Will we see that current mark set by Avengers Endgame ever get beat? I don't know that we ever will now. Will we see that all-time North American domestic box office record that's held by Star Wars: The Force Awakens? Will we ever see that beat? I don't know that we ever will now. I think these records may be the last bunch that we get, and I hope not. I hope not. I hope we see this big turnaround. I hope we see this big recovery. I hope we have better days ahead. But as a film fan, I'm nervous. I'm really nervous. And I'm sure you guys are feeling that too. And the longer this goes on, the more and more question marks that pop up, right? Like every day that passes, it just creates more questions. So it's going to be interesting to see how this kind of all evolves. And can the industry be more resilient than I'm giving it credit for? Can this studio theatrical industry that has been in place for longer than I or my parents or my grandparents have been alive, can it be more resilient than the current challenges we're facing? Maybe. I hope so. But I'm getting pessimistic. Question is, guys, what do you think? Now, obviously, all other things being equal, yes, we'll see these box office records eventually beaten at some point. But not all things are equal, and we might be in a time where the paradigm has shifted. Do you think we're going to see these big box office records now broken? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, we're now going to move on to our live questions part of the show and taking your live comments and questions. By the way, once again, if you want to get one in right now, you can still get one in. Use the tip link that's in the top of the description of this video. You can just click on it there or enter it streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tips. So with that down, let's get on over to your live questions, shall we? And we're going to start things off here with Willow. And Willow writes, you have said that studios are amoral and only care about making money. Would the lack of diversity in the past then be more because the moviegoers weren't showing a demand for stories with minority characters rather than the fault of the studios? That is a great question, Willow. Because yeah, there are two truths that are not mutually exclusive truths. Like, you know what mutually exclusive truths are, right? Like, that water is hot, that water is cold. They cannot both be true at the same time, right? However, there are truths that are not mutually exclusive. Those two truths are, number one, for over a century, the Hollywood film industry has had a very active and aggressive agenda of exclusion. There has, for over a century in Hollywood, been a very active and very aggressive agenda of exclusion. It's been the boys club, the white boys club, the white straight boys club. I am a member of the white straight boys club. Thank you very much. I'm proud to be. But there has been an agenda to exclude it to just that. The second truth is this, is that over the past century and more, there has been very similar sentiments amongst the public in general, right? There has been similar sentiments amongst the public in general. That goes without question and is in need of no explanation. So I think historically, as you look at it, it is a combination of both. It is not an either or. It's not a situation of, has it just been that the studios refused to allow more diversity into Hollywood? Or has it been the fact that our culture, because of where our culture has been at varying decades, there hasn't been a high demand for it? That's a little bit of a combination of both. Though I would say that had in the 1940s or 1950s, if they had done certain movies, they may have found an audience, but we'll never know. We'll never know. And it's when you understand that significant context, like today, we look back at shows like Star Trek in the 60s, right? We look back at shows like Star Trek and we say, okay, yeah, they had Uhura. Okay, no big deal. Yeah. Like to our perception from our cultural context today, oh yeah, it's fine. That was crazy at the time. And there's an episode in Star Trek where Kirk and Uhura have a kiss. Okay, no, yeah, big deal. Who cares? Well, yeah, but you don't understand is that at that time, that was the first time ever on broadcast television of an interracial kiss. I mean, it was big stuff. So yeah, I'd say it's more than just one. It's an excellent question, Will, but I'd say it's more just one dynamic. It's a bunch of different factors that all kind of pile in there at the same time. Okay, next up. My Comic Planet writes, part one. Hey, John. Did you hear the writer of Bill and Ted's movie, Ed Solomon, said yesterday about the We Got This Covered article claiming that there would be a Bill and Ted 4? He retweeted it on his Twitter page and said, by the way, this film is not happening. Sorry. It was priceless. Do you think more people in the industry will start to call them out like Ed did? And can they be sued for doing things like this? All right. Yeah, We Got This Covered is a particularly problem. And look, I'm not making any commentary on the overall quality of the overall body of work that We Got This Covered puts out. I'm strictly limiting my comments to their exclusive news that they put out. There is no greater culprit of pumping out false news, like completely wrong news, as We Got This Covered it does. And the problem is because We Got This Covered looks like a real legit site and they get a lot of traffic, for a long time when We Got This Covered would publish, no matter how ridiculous sounding the story is, they would put out a story and 50 other outlets would run the same headline saying, oh, reports are out that such and such is happening. What we all learned about a year or more ago was that, oh, if ever the originator of that story is We Got This Covered, we know to ignore it. Thing is, Hollywood, for understandable reasons, for the most part, a lot of people in Hollywood seem to have a policy of ignore it. Like the Hollywood industry, the writers, the directors, the studios, whatever, when there's BS stories that come out, for the most part, their stuff is just ignore it. Just ignore and leave it alone. So no, I don't think you're going to see, with a few exceptions, every once in a while, you'll see somebody come out and say, by the way, that's not true. You will see that happen every once in a while. But for the most part, they just, BS is BS and it's not my problem, you know? Can they be sued? No, they can't be sued. Not unless they do something like extremely, what's the best word to use here? That is extremely damaging. Like if they put out something that's like specifically and extremely damaging to somebody on a personal level, then you can get into trouble. But no, you can't go over the gate because all they have to say is, oh, hey, we heard somebody say this, so we're just saying what we heard. I mean, so yeah, but you got to be, there is a line you could cross to get into liable, but that's a very, very, very stiff and difficult line to cross. So generally speaking, them just cranking out kind of fake news, no, they can't be sued. So there's really no negative repercussions for them, unfortunately. Anyway. Let's move on here. My Comic Planet also writes, hey, John, I guess you heard the big news yesterday that Disney is set to lay off over 28,000 employees. Yikes. I knew there would be layoffs due to the pandemic, but I didn't think it would be this bad. How do you think this affects Disney going forward? Well, I mean, it's important to understand that as to my understanding of the story, it's 28,000 park workers at the various parks. It's not Disney Studios that's laying off 28,000 people. It's not, Disney Plus that's laying off 28,000 people. It's not Pixar that's laying off 28,000 people. To the best of my knowledge, and I could be incorrect about this, but to the best of my knowledge, it's primarily focused on park staff that's happening with. How does this affect them? Well, this is them doing a response. Them laying off 28,000 people isn't going to affect them in anything but a good way. In response to a context in a pandemic that has affected them in a very bad way. This is Disney trying to now insulate itself a little bit. And hey, listen, hats off and big applause to, hey, I'll give credit where it's due. Even though the parks have been closed, they have kept a lot of people officially on staff paying their health benefit premiums and all that kind of stuff, even when the parks have been closed. And and there have been some other companies doing that as well. And I tip my hat. I tip my hat to those companies who have done that. But at some point, you got to go. If you're a company, we can't just keep throwing money out the window. We're closed. We're not in business. We don't have any work for these 28,000 people to do. At some point, we hung in there as long as we could. We got to lay them off. So they're doing so to try to conserve finances, that's what they need to do. That's their responsibility. Now, you'll see them come back once everything opens up again. Then they'll do a whole bunch of hiring and hopefully bring a lot of those people back. But for right now, yeah. And it's unfortunate because, I'm a Disneyland member. I want to go back to Disneyland again, but when it's right. All right. Thanks for sending that in, man. Okay. So let's see here. Anonymous writes, hey, John, Robert, and Aaron. I know you don't like Ahsoka Tano. I do not like the character. No, I don't. Character yourself, but aren't you always asking the people at Star Wars to give us new heroes to cheer for and new stories to follow? Just saying, and yes, I do like Ahsoka Tano. No, hey, listen, you're in the majority and I'm in the minority. Listen, I acknowledge that completely. I am in the minority. I think it's a trash character. I think it's a terrible character. Like, I think the characters that Dave Filoni created and gave us, like in Rebels, where they're talking about Hera or Ezra or Sabine, like I think those are all more infinitely better characters. But that's just me. And again, you don't have to tell me I'm in the minority. I acknowledge I'm in the minority. But, it's like saying, I want something other than hamburgers tonight. Okay, here, eat this plate of dog poo. Well, no, I don't want to eat a piece of dog poo. Well, you said you want something other than hamburgers, so eat this plate of dog poo. Now, am I saying Ahsoka Tano's dog poo? No, it's not that bad. But just because, yes, I do want them to tell new stories with new characters. But that doesn't mean just give me any plate of dog poo and we'll just say, thank you, sir, may I have another? And they've done other great ones. Like I said, with Rebels, I think we've got a really great slew of really great characters. in Rebels, particularly Sabine Wren. Hera, I'm fascinated by. Ezra still around. There's another key character, that's dead. That's unfortunate. But so yeah, I do want new stories and new characters. But at this point, I want new. Because at this point, the Ahsoka Tano character is now all they keep, especially Dave Filoni, is all he just keeps going back to. Everything's got to have Ahsoka Tano. It's just Ahsoka Tano after Ahsoka Tano after Ahsoka Tano. It's just everything he does has to have Ahsoka Tano. I'm tired of it. Let's get something new. Let's get Mandalorian. That's brand new. So let's do some other new stuff. But again, I acknowledge I'm in the complete minority on that. I do. So, but I'm perfectly comfortable being in the minority on that one. Anyway. Let's move on here. Anonymous writes, with Jon Favreau not directing The Lion King 2, do you think this is because he still plans on returning to direct Jungle Book 2 once he finishes up The Mandalorian? We haven't heard much about that film in a while, but it's supposedly still happening. I don't see any meaning in it, to be honest with you. I don't look at Jon Favreau not coming back to do 2 as anything, because I think in a good, healthy franchise, I think it's perfectly good for another director to come in to do the sequel. I really do. Now, I know a lot of people feel like you got to bring back the original director. And sometimes I feel that way, sometimes. But I also feel like it's a really good, rejuvenating, fresh kick in the pants to sometimes maybe get a different director in. Besides that, I do think there's some other elements at play. Obviously, there's Jungle Book 2. By the way, there's that one Disneyland movie that Jon Favreau has kind of been talking about doing for like 10 years. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again. I personally, I mildly thought before, because Jon Favreau does have executive experience. I mildly thought before, yeah, Jon Favreau could be a decent pick to replace Kathleen Kennedy when it's time for her to step down. But after watching, number one, watching Mandalorian, but number two, watching the behind the scenes, like roundtables in Mandalorian, I'm watching that. And you remember I talked about yesterday, like I saw Dave Filoni. It's like, I've always liked Dave Filoni. I've never been more impressed with him than when I saw that behind the scenes and the roundtable stuff with Dave Filoni talking about Mandalorian. But I've also never been more convinced that maybe Jon Favreau's the guy to take over from Kathleen Kennedy, because I saw him as the executive. A lot of people would say before that they wanted Dave Filoni to take over Kathleen Kennedy's job. Dave Filoni doesn't know the first thing about running a company. Dave Filoni doesn't know the first thing about telling live action stories, which he said himself in the Mandalorian behind the scenes documentary. You saw him on set going, I don't know what the F I'm doing. But that to me impressed me about him. He's going to be a great live action director, not a good live action director. He's going to be a great live action director. Take that to the bank. But Jon Favreau, you saw him managing the storytellers. Because in that executive role, the reason Kevin Feige is the head of Marvel isn't because he's a great director. That's irrelevant. The skills of a director are separate from the skills of being a true executive that runs an operation. They're completely different skill sets. One has nothing to do with the other. And we saw Jon Favreau take a very, like a senior producing role with the MCU, working with Kevin Feige. We've seen him take over other things. And then now we see him actually overseeing and running all these other directors and all these other things. And he's kind of coordinating all them, putting each person in place that he thinks better suits their strengths and all that kind of stuff. And to me, that was an executive. I was watching that and all I could think about was Jon Favreau is an executive. He's no longer just Jon Favreau, the actor, who then when Iron Man came out became Jon Favreau. We knew him then as Jon Favreau, the director. He's no longer that anymore. He is Jon Favreau, the executive. And I think he'll be great at that. And so I'm going to kind of secretly think to myself that maybe one of the contributing factors of him not doing a Jungle Book 2, not to mention if you can get Barry Jenkins to come in and direct that Academy Award caliber guy, that's great. But I'm going to hold on to the belief that maybe it's because he's getting ready to take over Lucasfilm as a whole. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. All right, next up. Aaron Nanaka writes, hey, John, did you see Borat Gift of Pornographic Monkey device premier Mikhail Pence to make benefit recently diminished nation of Kazakhstan? Variety will premiere on Amazon Prime in late October, right before the election. Was this the right move? Oh, it's absolutely the right move. I mean, if you have this movie made, and it is in many ways a political satire, then you want to put it out at the height of political fever, right? Then it's a brilliant move. It's kind of like putting out a Halloween movie right close to Halloween. If you're putting out a political satire movie, what better time to release it than at the absolute apex and height of political fever in the world, right close to the American election? I think it's brilliant. It's the perfect time to release that sucker. It's the perfect time to release it. All right, next up. Dwayne Jackson writes, hello, John and friends. I finally watched Apocalypse War. The ending scene is serving as a DC rebirth to reboot the comics and animated verse. Not really. The Flash movie is serving as a soft reboot to the DCU. Nobody has ever said that. Like Walter Hamada has never said that. Are both somehow related with both being reboots? No. And by the way, Apocalypse War, much like most DC straight to animated stuff, and much like most Marvel straight to animated, Apocalypse War was terrible. Listen, I've had on many occasions when I thought something looked bad and you guys convinced me to try it and then I loved it, right? The Expanse, Doom Patrol, Harley Quinn. But every once in a while, I get you guys telling me I should really check something out because you'll think I really like it. That I just watch it and go, no, that was garbage. Apocalypse War was garbage. It was terrible. So no, I don't believe there's any connecting those. I don't think those are connected in any way, shape, or form, and nor should they be, because that was a steaming hot pile of trash, that movie. I thought. It's all subjective. It's all subjective. You may think differently, and your opinion is no less or no more valid than mine. But yeah, my take on it was absolute garbage. Dwayne Jackson writes, hello, John and friends. With HBO being everything DC, did you get HBO? You probably meant, do you think HBO should acquire Netflix's DC library? I think it would be a smart move to have all those properties under one roof. What do you think? It's all a matter of how much is it worth. Like, all things being equal, to have everything under one roof, yes, that's a good idea. Is it worth $30 million to have it all under one roof? No, probably not. And, Netflix bought those rights. Netflix isn't going to give them up for free, not at least until their lease is done. They're not just going to give them up. So is there benefit to having them under one roof? Yes, but then you have to ask yourself, how much is it worth, right? Here's a great example. Last weekend, Ann and I were sitting around watching something on TV. We were probably watching Ted Lasso, I think. And we were both suddenly in the mood for ice cream, which happens to me from time to time. I don't know if you know that. I'm a big appreciator of the ice cream. So we were both in the mood for ice cream. So neither of us felt like getting out and driving to the store and picking some up. So we thought about, okay, let's call, Postmates or Instacart or Uber Eats, or let's call one of those things. Let's get our app open and order it. And we were in the mood for this one place, but it ended up that just getting the ice cream, to get an ice cream for me and her with the service fees, tip, and all that kind of stuff, it was actually going to end up costing us almost $28. And so, did we want ice cream? Yes. Were we willing to pay to have it brought to us? Yes. But at some point, the dollar value gets high enough that it's like, do I want ice cream that bad? Like, is it worth $30 to me right now to have some delicious ice cream in my hand right now? I don't know if it's worth $30 for me to do it. And so, yeah, I think absolutely DC, Warner, HBO would love, all things being equal, to have all the DC properties under their roof. But is it worth it to skip the wait until the licenses run out, to pay $10 million, $15 $15 million, $8 million, $30 million. Money doesn't just magically appear out of the air. Is it worth that much to have it right there? Does the benefit equal the cost? And I would say if HBO Max thought the benefit equaled the cost, they would have done it. They would have done it like that. But they're probably thinking the benefit doesn't equal the cost, that the cost exceeds the benefit. So they'll just wait. They'll just wait till the licenses expire. And so that's probably the best thing. All right, next up. Ike Wolko writes, and who contributed $20. Thank you so much, man, for supporting the channel on that level. Yo, what up, John? It's my birthday. Happy birthday, Ike. And I'm so glad I get to spend it watching your show. I'm the guy who wrote about how it took 3 years to get a question answered on Mailbag. Idea for your next Case 4 video could be an analysis on who was right in Civil War. I kid you not. Okay, so the videos that Ike is talking about, you guys might remember I did 2 kind of videos recently. One, they're both over 20 minutes, but I did a video on an editorial video on a Disney Star Wars fan's perspective on why The Rise of Skywalker wasn't any good. Because we've heard lots of people who just hate everything that's new Star Wars, but I wanted to do a video as a person who is a fan of the Disney era Star Wars stuff, and why I, as one of those people, really didn't like Rise of Skywalker. So I want to do one on that. And then I did my The Case for Man of Steel, the most underappreciated comic book film of all time, the most underrated comic book film of all time. I kid you not. I had a discussion a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about if we did another one of those editorials, what could it be? And honestly, one of the things we brought up was Civil War. And who at the end of the day between Tony and Steve was right when you actually sit down and analyze Civil War. I kid you not. That is one of the ones that was high on our list. So maybe that will be the next one we do. Now that you mention it, it might be fate. It's the fates. Odin the All-Father has declared that that is what it should be. You are the sign. So maybe that will be the next one that we do. All right, keep your eyes open for that, Ike. All right, next up. Dwayne Jackson writes, hey, John and family, when a movie is bumped off its original release date and it's already being marketed, does the studio have a set budget for extra marketing? Meaning, does it have extra money since it spent its original budget? How does that work? All right, so there's a couple things to keep in mind here. The studio does not spend any money on the marketing. The distributor spends money on the marketing. In the life cycle of a movie, there are 2 distinct entities. The studio that makes the movie, the distributor who then takes that movie and decides what to do with it. Marketing, put it in theaters, put it straight to DVD or HBO or wherever. Like, the distributor then does that. Now, in the case of big major studios like Disney, they have several divisions. Disney has its own studio arms, and Disney happens to have its own distribution arm. All right. Warner Brothers has its own studio arm, but it also has its own distribution arm. A lot of studios do not, though. So there are 2 different things. So just as case in point, the studios, speaking technically, don't spend money on the marketing. The distributors do. But yeah, that's where it becomes expensive. It's not a small thing to change a release date, especially if you're getting close to that release date. Now, look, if you had a movie that was coming out in a year and then you decided to bump it another 3 months, no big deal. You haven't really started spending, you haven't really started spending your marketing budget yet. Maybe you made some posters, maybe you made a couple of announcements, but really you haven't started spending the real money yet on marketing because the movie was still a year away. But yeah, like when you're in a situation like that G.I. Joe movie that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did, where I think we got like almost like 2 months away from when that movie was supposed to come out. The marketing machine of that G.I. Joe movie was already in full gear, and they were dropping millions of dollars in marketing for that movie coming out in 2 months. And then all of a sudden they bumped it 6, 7, 8, 9 months, a year. I can't remember. They bumped it a significant difference. That means they were just going to have to spend all that money again later. So moving the release date of something, the closer you get to it, becomes a serious matter because you're talking serious marketing dollars. And yes, they have to pony up for it. They got to, unless they just don't want to market it anymore, they got to pony up for it again. And it's an expensive decision. That's why you always got to be very sure when you move a release date. You got to be very sure when you're moving a release date. I mean, and it should also be said, it probably impacts it less. It probably impacts it less when the movies say only bumped by like a week, right? Like if you're spending all your marketing money and it gets, if for a movie that's coming out in 4 weeks and then you just bump it 2 weeks, well, then you haven't really lost your, any of your marketing money because it's still going to work. But yeah, when you bump it for like 6 months down the road, there's a cost, man. There's a cost. All right. GQ writes, who is the better actor, Stallone, Arnold, or The Rock? That's actually an easy question. It's Sylvester Stallone is the best actor out of that bunch. Sylvester Stallone, there's actually been films where he has literally given Academy Award kind of level performances. As a matter of fact, he has Academy Award nominations. And I would say his best I don't know that he got an award nomination for it. Let me look it up here. He did this movie a bunch of years ago called Copland in 1997. So like 23 years ago. Incredible cast. Sylvester Stallone, Ray Liotta, Harvey Keitel, Robert De Niro, Peter Berg, Janine Garofalo, Robert Patrick, Michael Rappaport. I mean, on and on and on and on. It is a killer cast. I don't know if he got nominated for that. No, he did not get nominated for that. But I'm telling you, it is one of Stallone's best performances that he did. I actually really love this little movie he did called Copland. I thought it was fantastic. And I thought his performance in it was incredible. Not everybody loves it, but I thought it was incredible. Schwarzenegger, he's got an undeniable charisma on screen. Yes. Is he a great thespian? Arnold will tell you himself that he's not a great thespian. Certainly not an Academy Award level one. And The Rock, who is, by the way, turned into a very respectable actor, especially when you look at movies like Snitch or Faster or things like that. He has turned in some, he has become a very respectable actor in my opinion. Academy Award level yet? No. So to me, it's actually quite an easy answer. To me, it's Stallone. Stallone is probably the best pure thespian out of that group. All right, next up. Preston the Kryptonian writes, after watching that mess of a debate last night, it made me think of how far off a debate between President Camacho and President Dale from Mars Attacks would go. I know you don't like political talk, but I thought it was funny. I'm not going to get into any politics. I'm not going to get into any politics myself, but I think your illustration is apt. Thanks for sharing that, Preston. An anonymous viewer writes, hey, John and Rob, who's obviously not here today. I was watching your show last night, and you mentioned how you watch HBO Max through your iPad, and you bounced to Roku as well. Have you two thought about trying NVIDIA Shield? It is really made for game streaming, but it's great for video. Listen, I remember about a year and a half ago, I gave some very serious thought to getting an NVIDIA Shield. I really did. Partially for the gaming stuff. But now they've got there's so many gaming options now, especially through Xbox and their Game Pass. I'm really thinking about getting that Xbox Game Pass thing so I can actually play all their games and not have to have an Xbox. There's a lot of different options for it now. But one of the other appealing things was, as a streaming platform, I'm very, very happy with. At the end of the day, though, I'm very happy with Roku. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I am very, very happy with Roku. I'm very happy with the channel selection. I'm very happy with the unofficial channels that you can also go and get for these things. There's some fabulous unofficial channels that I use. I like the interface of Roku. I'm just a really big fan of the thing. It's quick, it's responsive. I have one of the newer ones. So yeah, I'm kind of like that. But yeah, NVIDIA Shield. It's a nice, I haven't looked at it in over a year because, I ultimately really decided was sticking in the Roku ecosphere. But NVIDIA Shield looked really good to me. So that's a nice one to recommend, Anonymous. All right, Abe 10 Alpha writes, I had an easier time hearing the dialogue in Tenet than I did watching the presidential debates. Again, I'm not personally going to go into it. I'm staying out of that. But that's one of the good comments of the day, Abe. Well said. All right, Anonymous viewer writes, after using NVIDIA Shield, I don't see myself using anything else. It accesses everything really fast. Great job, you guys in your show. You two make a great team, and your shows always kill my boredom. Well, thank you so much. I love having Aaron on the show. I've been working with Rob for years now. I've gotten to work over the years with some really, truly great people. That's been one of the highlights for me, is that I've had not just got to work with them, but also got to learn. Everybody I work with, I learn a little bit from, right? And I think everybody I've worked with has made me better, because I got to work with them and their talents. And, it's certainly the people I work with now, Aaron and Rob are no exceptions to that. So thank you for sharing that. All right, Michael H. Jones writes, who sends in $20. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that, man. Hey, John, have been watching you and a Patreon supporter for 3 years. Thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter, my friend. I appreciate that. Thank you for all you do. Really like the first clip of your documentary. So last night, I shared the first ever clip of my upcoming documentary, Movie Trailers, A Love Story. I shared the first clip last night with my Patreon supporters. Now, I am going to be releasing later today. I'm going to publicly be releasing the clip. Turns out I actually put up the wrong clip. I mean, it's the right clip, but I rendered it out from the wrong version of the movie. So there was a couple of things missing from the clip that you guys saw on Patreon last night. But it's essentially, the one I'm going to be releasing later today is essentially the same clip. But yeah, keep your eyes on the YouTube channel. A little bit later today, I'm going to be releasing the first clip from my documentary, give you guys a first taste of it. And I think it's going to be available by the end of November, at the very least by the end of the year, that we're going to have the movie available. But yeah, going to be releasing the first clip of it later. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, Michael. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. And thank you for being one of our Patreon supporters, man. All right, next up, Mandalorian of Gondor writes, hey, John, I've been trying to make my way in the film industry, but after those debates last night, I'm really eyeing Vancouver as a place to move. Are there any other Canadian cities that are hot spots for filming? Calgary, Montreal, thanks and stay safe. I actually saw some trending stuff on social media about moving to Canada was like a major trending thing on social media. Hey, best place in the world to move, man, is Canada. Vancouver is great. Vancouver, listen, my favorite Canadian city, other than the city of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is the greatest city in the world, in my opinion, but Toronto is New York, but clean. It's not the best way to, Toronto is like seriously one of the greatest cities in the world. Like Toronto is incredible. And I am naturally supposed to hate Toronto because Toronto and Hamilton do not like each other. But really Toronto is like just one of the greatest places in the world. But the thing about Vancouver is a lot of production happens in Vancouver because you literally get everything in Vancouver. You want to shoot your movie in the woods? Vancouver, all the wildlife and nature in the world there. The most beautiful scenic places in the world are in Vancouver and Alberta, which is right beside it. You want major metropolitan areas? You got Vancouver, one of the greatest shining jewels of a city on the planet. Multiculturalism, you got everything there. So a lot of stuff shoots there. If you weren't going to go there, then Toronto. Then Toronto's the place you got to be. A lot of stuff shoots in Toronto and right around to hell. A lot of stuff shoots in my hometown of Hamilton. A lot of stuff shoots there. Like even like Doom Patrol. Incredible Hulk, Titans right now. Like a lot of stuff shoots in Hamilton, Ontario. So, and Hamilton's only 45 minutes from Toronto. So like, I think either you'd be good. Vancouver or the Toronto, Hamilton area, you should be good. All right, next up. Mandalorian of Gondor also writes, the following 6 DC heroes have had little to no screen time in live action. Who is your favorite, and who would potentially work best in live action, whether TV or film? Adam Strange. Well, they've already kind of done Adam Strange, really. Animal Man, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, The Question, and Zatanna. Thanks, love all you do. Well, I mean, from a marketing point of view, Zatanna, right? Zatanna is a very popular character. I mean, and seriously, every Halloween, I see a lot of Zatanna costumes, like a lot. And they've been tying her more and more in with Constantine as well, in different mediums. So there's a marketability to that one. Listen, for a long time, there have been whispers about the studios trying to get something going with Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. There's a buddy cop concept there as a movie or as a TV show, probably more as a movie, but there's a buddy cop concept there that could be gold. So from a marketing point of view, Zatanna, but the one that I think could really click, potentially, I mean, it could be awful, but the one that could potentially really click, I would go Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. All right. Dark Knight Rises writes, hey, John, Steven Spielberg once quoted as saying there were only 7 true movie stars in the world, and Sean Connery was one of them. I always was curious, who were the other 6 he was referring to? No idea. I've heard him mention that before, but I cannot remember for the life of me who they were. I can't even remember when Spielberg said that, to be honest with you. So, unfortunately, no. I'm sure a very, very quick, easy Google search would probably answer that question, though, Dark. No problem. But Sean Connery, yeah, he would definitely have been one of them, particularly in the day. In his day, he totally would have been one of them. Okay, next up, we've got Dallas Cowboys, who are 1-2. I really don't like the Dallas Cowboys, who are 1-2 right now. Anyway, should be 0-3. If it wasn't for that stupid onside kick last week, the Dallas Cowboys should be 0-3. Anyway, hey, John, my friend and I found out Miss Cummings is from Texas. Yes, she is. And went to university not too far from us up here in the North Texas area. We're big fans of her as well as the show. Just wanted to send a special greetings from the Lone Star State. Well, thank you so much for that, Dallas Cowboys. As a matter of fact, I'm going over to Aaron's tonight. Me and Ann are going to go over and hang out at Aaron and Tom's tonight. Going to go have dinner, play some games, watch a little bit of the Lakers NBA championship start tonight. Lakers in the Heat. So that should be fun. Looking forward to that. So I will pass that along, Dallas Cowboys fan. I will make sure she knows you said that. Thank you for that. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. All right, Lee Crow writes, just thought I'd let you know that I bought 2 6-packs of Zevia. That's what I've got here. I got my Zevia right here. Sponsor me, you sons of bitches. I got my 6-pack of Zevia because you're talking about it all the time. What flavor do you get? Sponsor him, you sons of bitches. That's right. I always get the same one. I've liked other ones, but I am really a sucker for their cola. And you can see right here, wait a second. Let me cover my face so the autofocus will get it. There it is. The cola flavor. That's my, by the way, how great is this autofocus on the Sony A-series? The Sony A-series autofocus is like, I think it's even better than Canon's. But anyway, that's just me. The cola flavor. The cola flavor is the one I really like to go to. All right. Dark Knight Rises writes, hey, John, 2 of my favorite books about the movie industry are Sidney Lumet's Making Movies and A Star Is Found by casting director Jane Jenkins. I'm not familiar with that one, to be honest. Do you have any other good book recommendations? Yeah, I actually have that one by Sidney Lumet because a buddy of mine who's a director actually gave me that book years ago. Actually, it was when I was in the process of, I was already well into the process of making my little rom-com movie, The Anniversary, and he gave me that book, and it's fantastic. There's another great one that even if you're not an actor but want to get a better sense of filmmaking is, I think it's called Acting for Film. I think that's what it's called, but anyway, it's by Michael Caine. And I think the title is Acting for Film. I also have that one. There is a terrific one that's a great general one called The Filmmaker's Handbook. The Filmmaker's Handbook. I think it's, and they put it every like 4 or 5 years, they put out a new edition of it, a new updated edition of it to reflect changing technologies and reflect the changing of the industry. I think that they're on like their 5th edition now. It's absolutely 100% fantastic. Another one that I have is called The Tools of Screenwriting by David Howard. So that's another one because I also do, I do a lot of my own writing. So I've got several books on screenwriting. The best one of those is the Tools of Screenwriting, David Howard. I would check that one out. So again, but if I had to recommend one to somebody, it really is The Filmmaker's Handbook. I that was one of the first filmmaking books I ever bought. And to this day, I still have it. I mean, I still go back to it every once in a while. And I've got one of the older editions. I think I got like the 2nd edition or something. I think now they're on like edition 5. But that's one you might want to check out. Okay, next up, Nixon Magic writes, who tips in $20. Thank you, Nixon, for supporting the channel on that level, dude. Should Christian Bale return as Batman with Christopher Nolan's blessing to honor the previous installments of the Nolanverse and consider roles in the Flash movie and or a Justice League reboot? Let me know your thoughts. No. I'll tell you why, because Christopher Nolan wants nothing to do with that. Christopher Nolan does not want his iteration of Batman considered at all as a part of anything else going on in DC. He was very, very clear about that. And I'll tell you what else. One of the factors that went into George Miller's Justice League movie that he was going to do, where Armie Hammer was going to be Batman, they were like just weeks away from starting to shoot that. One of the reasons that thing ultimately got its plug pulled, there are other bigger reasons, but one of the contributing factors is Christopher Nolan was not happy that they were going to be doing another movie with a different Batman while he had his Batman going. So listen, anything is possible, right? Batman doesn't belong to Christopher Nolan. It belongs to Warner Brothers, but they also don't like to piss off Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan he does not want his Batman or his films in any way associated with any of that other stuff. So because of that, I don't think you're going to see Christian Bale do that. So I think there's no chance that Christopher Nolan gives his blessing, but Warner Brothers doesn't need his blessing. Warner Brothers doesn't need his blessing, but I just don't think they want to piss him off. And on top of that, I really don't believe Christian Bale would do it without Christopher Nolan blessing it. And I just don't see Christopher Nolan blessing it. He was very clear about that stuff before. So, I mean, listen, things can change. Things can absolutely change. But number one, I don't think they should. And number two, there's no need for Christian Bale's Batman. I think that would just dilute it too much. So I don't think there's any need for it personally. All right, next up, Superman Steve writes, hey, John, I watched the original Saw movie for the first time. I like the original Saw movie. You got Wesley in there. How did Shawnee Smith not win an Oscar for her performance? Because it wasn't Oscar worthy. It was great, but it wasn't Oscar worthy. She nailed that movie. Also, what happened to Spiral? Sorry, I've not written in a long time. Had a lot going on. No problem, man. But let me bring up the original Saw movie here. So, wow, because it's I always mispronounce his name. Cary Yules. Hold on a second, I lost it all of a sudden. I think it's Cary Yules. Where is it? Elwes. I always mispronounce his name too. He was Wesley in Princess Bride. So yes, so Shawnee Smith played Amanda, which, I mean, it wasn't even that big of a role, to be honest with you. Spiral is, of course, the one that Chris Rock is supposed to be doing. That is a good question. Whatever happened to that movie? Let me look. Hold on a second. Let me pull this up here. I think it got moved to 2021. Okay, here it is right here. It's officially moved to May 21st, 2021. I believe it was originally supposed to come out in 2020, I think. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it was always supposed to come out in May of 2021, but I thought it was supposed to come out this year. At any rate, it's coming out right now. It's officially listed as May 2021. So it's got Chris Rock, and it's also got that dude who's from Handmaid's Tale, whose name is eluding me. But it comes from Handmaid's Tale. So there's that. But anyway, yes, right now, Spiral, the next Saw kind of movie, is, and I'll bring it up here so you guys can see what we're talking about. There you see Chris Rock and the guy from Handmaid's Tale. This is a Saw universe movie Spiral from the Book of Saw is the actual full title. Spiral from the Book of Saw. Right now scheduled for May of 2021. So keep your eyes open for that. All right, next up. Gia97 writes, hey guys, did you watch The Devil All the Time? What do you think about Tom Holland's performance? Still haven't watched it, to be honest. It's hard. You know what? It's really difficult for me. When a trailer for something comes out that completely misses with me, and I was interested in Devil All the Time because of Tom Holland, because of Robert Pattinson, and then the trailer came out, and I found the trailer unbearably boring. And I felt like I've seen it all before, but for whatever reason, the trailer lost me. And so it killed all my enthusiasm for the movie. And so I've never brought myself to watching it yet. I've heard it's okay. I've heard Devil All the Time is okay, but I've heard Tom Holland is really good in it. Now, I'm not speaking from firsthand experience because I haven't seen the movie myself, but I have heard that Tom Holland is quite good in it. So hopefully in the next couple of days, I'll finally sit down and pop on Netflix. You know what? I was thinking about watching it last night, but there's that little video game documentary series that's on Netflix right now. I can't remember the name of it. And so we just watched a couple episodes of that instead, but I will get around to watching that at some point. Okay. Jesse C writes, saw The Way Back and Invisible Man. Nice back-to-back doubleheader. Ben's performance was great. Ben's performance in The Way Back was fantastic. I loved Affleck in that. Was great. And wow, I now wish I got to see The Invisible Man in theaters. Not a scary horror movie, an emotional horror movie. Also, Aldous Hodge, that man is superhero body ready. He absolutely is. He was great. Now listen, I've said before, I don't have a large sample size of Aldous Hodge's acting work to know like how good do I think he's going to be? How good do I think he can be? I've just got too small of a sample size for him. But that sample size, that sample of his work in Invisible Man was great. I'm excited for that. And absolutely, like, The Way Back was very good. I didn't think it was like the best movie of the year or anything, but I thought it was very good. But Ben's performance was fantastic. If the Oscars were being held today in this very weird 2020, Ben would have to be one of the nominees, I would think. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with the Oscars. But at any rate, that's where I'm at right now. But yeah, Invisible Man, I got to go back and watch it again. I saw it a few times when it came out. I got to go back and watch it again. I really enjoyed that film. You know what? I did think it was legitimate in a couple of scenes. I thought it was legitimately kind of scary. But it was just great tension. That scene, if you haven't seen the movie, you won't know what I'm talking about, so it's not spoiling anything. What about that scene in the restaurant? How great was that scene in the restaurant? Pretty great. All right, next up. My Comic Planet writes, hey, John, did you hear the surprising news that the LA Comic-Con is a go for an in-person event this December? I think tickets are on sale now. How dangerous do you think this decision is, and does it set a new important precedent for future conventions? I had heard something about that. How dangerous do I think it'll be? It really all depends. Like, going to the grocery store can be dangerous right now. But if the grocery store you go to has the proper safety protocols in place and the proper rules, and most importantly, they're enforcing those rules, they can actually be pretty safe. Going to the movie theaters right now could be a very dangerous thing. But if you go to a movie theater that has proper safety procedures in place and the proper rules and are properly following those rules, like the two theater experiences I've had, then it can actually be quite a safe environment. So it really all depends on what are they going to do with this. How are they going to manage this? Are they going to limit how many people can be in the convention center at one time? Will they have a particular limit on how many people can be in any particular panel at a time? Will they be doing temperature checks at the door, requiring masks and all that? It all depends. And how strict are they going to be, and how limiting will they be? I mean, so the answer is it could be dangerous. It could not be dangerous. It really all depends on, until I know what their specific protocols are going to be, it's impossible to say. If they're only going to let in one person for every 30 square feet of space that they have in the convention center, and they're going to limit to 20% capacity in every ballroom, and they're going to be requiring masks and hand sanitizing and temperature checks and all that kind of stuff, then it actually could be no more dangerous than going to the grocery store, if done right. If not done right, it could be a very dangerous situation. So, I mean, I don't know. Until we know specifically what their protocols are going to be, it's hard to kind of evaluate how dangerous or not dangerous that particular scenario will be. Good question, though, Comic Planet. All right, next up. Fabian Vegas writes, "Hey, John, I'm anxiously awaiting the Amazon Lord of the Rings series." Oh, me too, man. "Did you hear the news that Swedish actress Moifrid Clark has been cast as Galadriel? What do you think of this? I'm kind of disappointed we won't get Blanchett back, and I'm open to new things." Yeah, there was a part of me that thought maybe getting Cate Blanchett was a possibility. I mean, depending. I mean, I thought if Galadriel's role in this show was going to be very small, like you just have to get Cate Blanchett to show up for a day, then maybe there's a possibility of that, but it's perfectly okay that it's not her. It's perfectly okay that it's not her. It would have been awesome if it was, but it's not, so it's fine. I'm not really familiar with Moifrid Clark's work too much. I mean, maybe if I look her up and do so, I can't really speak too much to that. But yes, I was also a little bit disappointed that's not going to be Blanchett. But again, it's not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination. But I am very excited for the show, man. I'm very excited for the show. All right, Casey McNatt writes, "Hey, John, how are you today? I'm doing well today, thank you. I was just wondering, during the October season, do you ever plan a 31 Days of Horror marathon?" No, I do not. I usually plan one every year, and this year I am looking at international horror movies because I feel like I don't give them a chance. Oh, and dude, listen, the international horror movies are some of the best ones in the world. I mean, there's a strong case that a lot of the internet, particularly like the Asian markets, they know how to do horror better than we do. I mean, rom-coms, we do them best. Big comic book films, we do them best. But honestly, I feel like horror, I feel like there's a lot of different international markets that have just learned how to do horror better than us. And so, and it's not just the Asian markets either. So I think that's a great thing for you to do. I don't personally, listen, I like a good horror movie as much as anybody, but I'm not really a horror movie guy. So no, I don't personally plan a 31 Days of Horror or anything like that for myself around this time of year. But let me tell you, I think your idea of focusing on international horror this year, great call. I think you're going to be very, very pleasantly surprised when you go and make your selections. All right. Chris 301291 writes, "Hey, John, any plans for new episodes of Best Movie, Worst Movie? I love your podcast and listen to every episode at least 10 times already. Would love some new ones. Thanks for all your great work." It has been difficult. So first of all, absolutely yes. Best Movie, Worst Movie. That's the one with me, Cody Miller, and Robert Meyer Burnett. It is absolutely going to be returning. It has been difficult because with Cody not living here, and Cody was prepping for the Olympics, and then there was all the drama with the Olympics, obviously, and now his wife is now 8 months pregnant. Allie is now 8 months pregnant, and so we're gonna probably have to still wait for a few more beats before, but we absolutely plan on getting back to Best Movie, Worst Movie. We absolutely do, but it's still gonna be a few months off. But we will get back to it. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening to that podcast. We have a lot of fun making that one. Thank you for listening to it. All right. Darth Rutsky writes, "Hey, John, wrong. Haha, Daniel Day-Lewis could pull it off." We're talking about Daniel Day-Lewis's Conan. Could pull it off. All hail old man Conan. Seriously, though, as a collector of the Conan comics and books, there is such great content to pull from. Not that they need to, they just need a good story. Listen, that's the one thing a lot of people don't realize is how much Conan lore there really is. You know, I first became really aware of that because of John Schnepp. John Schnepp had a lot of the old Conan stuff. And up until that point, like I knew there was the older serialized stuff and I knew about the movie, but I didn't know there was that much lore material. And like I said, Schnepp was the one that really made me aware of that. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot they could draw from, or they could go completely original, but they're going to have choices. And what's important here is that the deal that Netflix has made has been with the people who hold all the literary rights. So not everybody can draw. If you're going to do a Conan thing, which I believe Conan is a public domain figure, but if you're going to do a Conan thing, kind of like Thor, you can make a Thor movie. Did you know that? You can make a Thor movie if you want to. Disney does not own the rights to Thor. Disney owns the rights to their iteration of Thor. Right? So you could do your own thing of Thor. You just can't do anything with your Thor that Marvel made up for their Thor. So if Marvel came up with something that was for their Thor, you can't use that with your own Thor. But if you want to make a Thor movie, you can. I believe Conan, I could be wrong about this, but I believe Conan is a public domain character. But, there are people who own rights to a lot of the older stuff to Conan. You wouldn't be able to take from that. So Netflix, I believe, is making the deal with the people who own the literary rights, and therefore they can draw on that if they want to, which I think is pretty interesting. All right. Jesse writes, well, John, if movie theaters go extinct, at least I can say the last film I saw in theaters was 1917 back in February. What an amazing theatrical experience that was. Listen, all movies are better on the big screen. All movies. But there are some that you must see on the big screen. Like 40-Year-Old Virgin is better on the big screen. But you don't have to see the 40-Year-Old Virgin on the big screen. 1917, you will never fully appreciate it unless you saw it on the big screen. You can still like it and you can still love the film, but you'll never be able to fully appreciate it unless it's on the big screen. I feel like the Lord of the Rings there's a lot of films like that too, but 1917 is absolutely one of those, Jesse. I'm glad you got a chance to see it on a big screen. All right, Russell Amador writes, hey, John, I truly miss the days of reading box office reports. Me too, man. I love analyzing box office. I love it. Box office reports, joining in on fantasy box office games, teaser trailers to trailers, complaining about 30 minutes worth of ads before a movie. Hopefully sooner rather than later, this can be the normal again. I agree. But again, as long as we live in a culture where a significant number of the people are morons and won't take this thing seriously, it's going to be later rather than sooner. It's going to be later rather than sooner. Unfortunately, this thing would have been done by now. The virus wouldn't have disappeared altogether, but the crisis would have been done by now. If we as people who live in this country that I live in right now had taken things as seriously as, say, New Zealand did, our whole everything would be so much closer. Maybe not 100% back to normal, but we would be so much closer back to being normal by now. But we're not. And now everybody's got to suffer because of the actions of some morons. Is what it is. But I agree, hopefully sooner rather than later, but it will probably be later rather than sooner, if at all. Anyway, let's move on here. Jason writes, and tips in $20. Thank you for supporting the channel on that level, Jason. Appreciate that, man. Hey, John and Rob, did you see that Disney Plus added a group watch feature? I think this will be a fun addition, being able to sync and watch with family and friends, especially with new Marvel and Mandalorian content coming. Your thoughts? Yes, but it's not great. Here's the problem. So Disney, for those of you who haven't seen this, Disney Plus has added a feature where you, and I think it's up to 8 people, can sync a piece of content on Disney Plus and you can all watch it at the same time. There are some big limitations with it though. First of all, is how many people can do it. I think the limit is 8. One of the other big limitations is you can't chat as you're doing it. Now, Netflix has like the Netflix party. That thing we did a Netflix party watch. I think we did it for, what did we do it for? I feel like it was for one of the Oh, we did it for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We did a Netflix watch party, right? And we were able to have a ton of people in there, and we were able to have the chat, and we were able to do all that, and it was great. I love that feature. So yes, Disney Plus has rolled out a version of this, but right now it's still really limited. So it's limited enough that it doesn't get me excited yet. But they will improve it. They will improve it. It will get better. And this is a start. So I am looking for, honestly, I think a really good watch-along app to be on things like HBO Max and Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime. I think they're all going to have them at some point. And I think that's going to make like group watching experiences pretty fun. I mean, if you can't be in the theater, it's not as good, but you can make the best of it. And I think these group watching features can help you make the best of it. So I think it's great. It's just that the feature itself isn't great yet. Certainly not as good as Netflix's version, but it'll get there. The important thing is that they've started. All right. Jesse writes, just saw a teaser for the Spider-Man PS5 remaster that and they changed the facial model of Peter, and it looks like a bad deepfake of Tom Holland. A strange decision at best. I have not seen that. Let me see if hold a second. Spider-Man PlayStation remaster. Let me see here. Oh my goodness. I am looking at it right now. Let me see if, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this good enough, but I'm looking at this right now. You're right. It does look a little different. I'm going to have to go through and watch this thing to see that. I mean, it's an interesting decision trying to go back afterwards. Like, did Tom Holland something? To be honest, it doesn't look an awful lot like Tom Holland. But it does look different. That's interesting. Thank you for putting that on my radar, Jesse. I'm going to have to go in and check that out. Thank you for putting that there. That looks interesting. Okay. Next up, final question of the day. Comes to us. It's amazing how much faster we get through everything when it's just me here by myself. The Gerinator writes, hey, John, I assume you appreciate Zack Snyder's vision for his movies better than most. Another controversial director is Guy Ritchie. What are your thoughts on his movie King Arthur? I feel the movie will be liked better given time than first released. Listen, I love Zac Ritchie. I love Guy Ritchie. I love Guy Ritchie. Lock, Stock, Snatch is one of my top 20. Snatch doesn't make it in my top 10 of all time, but Snatch is in my top 20. All-time favorite movies. What Guy Ritchie did with Aladdin, I thought it was a strange choice. I love Guy Ritchie, but I thought him directing Aladdin was a strange choice. Strange choice. But I loved Aladdin. I loved his version. I thought his Aladdin, not as good as the original, but I loved it. I was just pure joy watching that. Pure joy. I really like what he did with the Sherlock Holmes stuff. I'm a big Guy Ritchie fan. And I'll tell you what, everybody hated that King Arthur movie. That he did with, who's the dude who plays Jax? What's his name again? Who plays Jax in Sons of Anarchy? I'm going to kick myself that I didn't remember his name. Charlie Hunnam. Charlie Hunnam as Arthur. Everybody hated that movie. Except me. I had a lot of fun with it. Was it Guy Ritchie's best movie? No. Does it have issues? Yes. But it is a definitively Guy Ritchie movie. And I know most people hate it, and I know a lot of you guys probably hated it too. I'll tell you what, though, I had a lot of fun with that movie. I did. I enjoyed Guy Ritchie's King Arthur. And I agree with you. I think King Arthur is going to be like Man of Steel. I mean, it's not as good as Man of Steel. Don't get me. I'm not saying King Arthur is as good as Man of Steel. It's not. But I think like Man of Steel, I think as years go by, as people go back to maybe revisit it and give it another shot, they might find that they actually appreciate it a little bit more than they did the first time. I don't know that. I'm just guessing, but I thought there was such a great frantic kind of pace to it. Again, it has its issues. There are things about it that even I didn't like, but overall, I got a kick out of that movie. But that's just me. All right, guys, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. thank you guys so much for being here and being a part of the show. Once again, guys, I want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, make sure you click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to the channel, keep up to date on all the things that we got going on around here. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your podcasting app of choice, and check out the audio version when you can't be in front of a YouTube channel. Thank you to all of you guys for spending part of your day here with us today. Special thank you to all of you who sent in the live questions, because number one, you gave us great fun things to talk about, and number two, you supported this channel while you did it. And all of us here, thank you very much for that. Guys, please remember to do the four main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.